The massive archaeological dig site on Kepler 442b stretched across what had once been a thriving city. Dr. Elena Vasquez wiped sweat from her forehead as she carefully brushed dirt away from another stone tablet. The human expedition had been working on this alien world for 6 months now, and every day brought new mysteries. "Another one," she called out to her team. The tablet was covered in the same intricate symbols that had puzzled researchers across 3 different star systems. No one could make sense of the ancient writing, despite the best efforts of linguists, cryptographers, and even advanced AI systems. Professor Zefkara, the expedition's lead xenolinguist, approached with his usual measured steps. The tall, blue-skinned Altarian had been studying dead languages for over 2 centuries. His forearms moved gracefully as he examined Elena's discovery through his specialized optical enhancers. "Fascinating," Zefkara murmured, his voice carrying the melodic tones typical of his species. "The symbol density appears higher on this specimen. Perhaps this contains more significant information than the previous fragments." Elena nodded, carefully lifting the tablet from its resting place. The stone felt warm to the touch, which was odd considering it had been buried for millennia. She handed it to the Altarian scholar, who immediately began his analysis. The dig site buzzed with activity as teams from 12 different species worked together. The crystalline minds of Vega processed data through their living computers. The insectoid hive workers from Proxima Centauri used their natural precision to excavate delicate artifacts. Even the energy beings from the Magellanic Clouds had sent representatives, their consciousness housed in specialized containment suits. This was the most ambitious archaeological project in galactic history. The ruins on Kepler 442b represented the oldest known civilization discovered so far. Initial dating suggested these structures were built over 50,000 years ago, predating every other known sapient species by at least 20,000 years. Dr. Marcus Chen, the human expedition leader, reviewed the day's findings in his temporary laboratory. Hundreds of tablets, wall inscriptions, and carved monuments had been catalogued, but none had yielded their secrets. The symbols seemed to follow patterns, suggesting a sophisticated written language, but every attempt at translation had failed. "The mathematical models don't work," reported Dr. Lyra Songweaver, an ethereal being from the Andromeda system whose species communicated through harmonic frequencies. "We've tried every known linguistic framework. This language doesn't follow conventional rules." Marcus rubbed his temples. The pressure to succeed was enormous. The Galactic Council had funded this expedition with the hope of learning more about the galaxy's earliest inhabitants. If these ancient beings had achieved interstellar travel 50,000 years ago, their knowledge could revolutionize current technology and philosophy. "Perhaps we're approaching this wrong," suggested Commander Thrix, a reptilian draconin whose species excelled at strategic thinking. "Instead of treating these as individual symbols, maybe we should consider them as complete concepts or ideas." The team had heard similar suggestions before. They had tried reading the symbols as pictographs, as mathematical equations, as musical notation, and even as star charts. Nothing worked. Zefkara returned with Elena's tablet, his expression thoughtful. "I've completed the initial analysis. The stone composition matches others we've found, suggesting it originated from the same quarry. However, the symbols are arranged in a more complex pattern than usual." He placed the tablet on the examination table, where holographic scanners immediately began creating detailed 3-dimensional maps of every mark and groove. The symbols seemed to dance in the blue light, their intricate curves and angular lines forming patterns that almost seemed familiar but remained frustratingly incomprehensible. "Wait," Elena said, leaning closer to the holographic display. "Can you rotate the image?" "Certainly," Zefkara replied, manipulating the controls. The tablet slowly turned in the projected space. Elena studied the symbols from different angles. Something about their arrangement seemed off, but she couldn't quite identify what was bothering her. "Can you flip it completely?" The hologram inverted, showing the tablet as if viewed from below. Suddenly, Elena's eyes widened. "Oh my God," she whispered. The symbols, when viewed upside down, transformed completely. What had appeared to be abstract alien writing now revealed itself as something far more familiar. The curves became letters, the angular marks became numbers, and the complex patterns became recognizable mathematical formulas. It's in multiple human languages," Elena said, her voice shaking with excitement. "Look, this section is in ancient Latin. This part is in Sanskrit. And these formulas, they're advanced physics equations, but using mathematical notation that wouldn't be developed by humans for thousands of years after this was supposedly written. The laboratory fell silent. Every being present stared at the inverted tablet, trying to process what Elena had discovered. Zethkaris' optical enhancers whirred as he focused on specific sections. This is impossible. Humans achieved spaceflight only recently in galactic terms. Your species couldn't have built this civilization. But, the evidence is right there, Elena pointed at the hologram. These aren't just random human languages. Look at the mathematical formulas. This equation describes faster-than-light travel using principles that human scientists are only beginning to understand. Dr. Chen activated the site-wide communication system. All teams, please report to the main laboratory immediately. We have a significant development. Within minutes, representatives from every species on the expedition had gathered. The room filled with a cacophony of different languages, breathing patterns, and electromagnetic frequencies as various beings tried to understand what they were seeing. The implications are staggering, announced Dr. Lyra Songweaver after examining the data. If this civilization was indeed human, it means your species achieved interstellar travel and advanced technology 50,000 years ago, then somehow lost it all. Commander Thrix's reptilian features showed deep concentration. This doesn't align with any historical records. The oldest human artifacts we've discovered elsewhere in the galaxy date back only a few thousand years. Maybe they're not human artifacts, suggested Hive Queen Zack through her translator device. Perhaps this ancient civilization encountered humans and learned their languages. Elena shook her head. Look at the mathematical proofs. These equations describe concepts that are uniquely human in their approach. The way they break down complex problems into smaller components, the specific notation style, even the logical progression follows patterns that human mathematicians use. As the debate continued, Elena noticed something else. In one corner of the tablet, barely visible even in the enhanced holographic display, was a small symbol that made her heart race. Zoom in on Sector 7 Alpha, she instructed the computer. The image expanded, revealing a tiny mark that looked like a stylized letter E combined with what appeared to be coordinates. That's my signature, Elena whispered. The way I mark my archaeological finds. But, that's impossible. I've never been to this planet before. The room erupted in confused voices and electronic chatter. How could a modern human signature appear on an artifact that predated human civilization by thousands of years? Zethkara studied the mark carefully. The weathering patterns matched the rest of the tablet. This mark is as old as the other symbols. There has to be an explanation, Marcus said, trying to maintain order. Elena, think carefully. Have you ever seen anything like this before? Any dreams, visions, or memories that might explain this? Elena examined the tablet again, this time looking at the entire surface instead of individual sections. As she studied the complete text, a chill ran down her spine. The content wasn't just random human writing translated from some alien original. It was a detailed account of the archaeological expedition they were currently conducting. Marcus, she said slowly, this tablet describes our dig site. It mentions the location where we found it, the composition of our team, even specific conversations we've had over the past few months. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Either this ancient civilization had somehow predicted their exact expedition in incredible detail, or something far stranger was happening. Dr. Chen ordered an immediate expansion of the excavation around Elena's discovery site. If one tablet contained information about their current mission, there might be others with even more revealing content. As the teams worked through the night under portable fusion lights, they uncovered a chamber that had been sealed for millennia. The walls were covered with murals depicting humans working alongside various alien species. But these weren't primitive cave paintings. They showed advanced technology, starships, and scenes of cooperation between species that, according to all known history, had never met until relatively recently. Look at this, called out Dr. Jan Silverstream, an aquatic being from Europa whose species excelled at pattern recognition. These murals show the same humans depicted throughout, but in different time periods. See how the technology changes and advances in sequential panels? Elena studied the murals carefully. In the earliest panels, humans worked with simple tools and primitive shelters. But, as the sequence progressed, the technology became more sophisticated. Starships appeared, then, weapons that could destroy planets, then, machines that could manipulate space and time itself. It's like a historical record, she realized. But, not of the past. It's showing the future. Our future. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal holding a crystal that pulsed with soft light. As Elena approached it, the crystal's glow intensified, and, suddenly, her mind filled with images and information that felt both foreign and familiar. She saw herself, but older, standing in this same chamber thousands of years in the future. She watched as her future self carefully carved the tablets they had been finding, encoding messages for the past using languages and symbols that would only be deciphered when viewed from the correct perspective. The vision expanded, showing her a vast temporal loop. Humanity would achieve incredible technological advancement, learn to manipulate time itself, then use that knowledge to send information back through history. The ancient civilization on Kepler 442b wasn't alien at all. It was human, but human from a future so distant that it had become unrecognizable. Elena. Marcus's voice seemed to come from very far away. Elena, can you hear me? She opened her eyes to find herself on the chamber floor, surrounded by concerned faces representing a dozen different species. The crystal continued to pulse, but its light was now barely visible. What did you see? Asked Sethkara, his optical enhancers focused intently on her. Elena struggled to organize the information flooding her mind. We're not just archaeologists here. We're part of the loop. Everything we discover, everything we learn from this site, will eventually lead humanity to develop the technology needed to build this civilization in the first place. She pointed to the murals. These aren't records of the past. They're instructions for the future. The tablets we've been finding aren't just written in human languages by coincidence. They were written by humans, from a future where we've learned to send information backward through time. The chamber fell silent except for the various breathing and energy patterns of different species processing this revelation. But why? Asked Commander Thrix. Why would future humans create this elaborate setup? Elena touched the crystal again, and more images flowed through her consciousness. She saw wars between galactic civilizations, planets destroyed by technology run amok, entire species extinct because they had developed faster than their wisdom could guide them. To prevent catastrophe, she said finally. Every species in the galaxy is heading toward the same destructive path that humanity once took. This site isn't just about human history. It's about galactic survival. As if responding to her words, the chamber walls began to glow, revealing even more inscriptions. But these weren't in human languages. They were in the native scripts of every species currently represented on the expedition. Sethkara approached one of the Altarian inscriptions, his movements suddenly urgent. This describes the Great Plague that wiped out 90% of my species 3,000 years ago. But it also shows how it could have been prevented. Similar gasps and exclamations came from other team members as they found messages in their own languages, describing pivotal moments in their species' histories and alternative paths that could have been taken. Elena realized that the human messages had just been the key to unlock a much larger treasure trove of information. Future humanity hadn't just sent back knowledge for themselves. They had created a guide for helping every intelligent species in the galaxy avoid the mistakes that led to destruction and extinction. The archaeological expedition had become something much more significant than anyone had imagined. They weren't just uncovering the past, they were being handed the tools to reshape the future of galactic civilization itself. The Discovery Chamber had been sealed off from the main dig site while teams worked around the clock to document and analyze the unprecedented findings. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before a massive wall inscription, her neural interface directly connected to the translation matrices that had been developed over the past week. The technology had advanced rapidly once they understood the temporal nature of the messages. The neural link is working perfectly, reported Dr. Kestor, a cybernetic being from the Tau Ceti system whose species had perfected biological digital integration centuries ago. We're receiving clear data streams from the temporal crystals. Elena nodded, though her attention remained focused on the overwhelming flow of information entering her consciousness. The future humans had embedded far more than simple warnings in these artifacts. They had created a comprehensive guide for galactic development, complete with detailed technological specifications, social frameworks, and diplomatic protocols. I'm seeing blueprints for energy systems that could eliminate resource scarcity across entire star systems, she reported to the assembled team. But, more importantly, I'm seeing the social and political frameworks needed to implement this technology safely. Professor Zefkara monitored Elena's vital signs through his sophisticated medical scanners. The Altarian had become fascinated by the human capacity to interface directly with the temporal artifacts, something no other species seemed capable of doing as effectively. "Remarkable," he murmured. "Human neural patterns appear uniquely compatible with the information encoding used in these artifacts. Almost as if the encryption was specifically designed for human consciousness." Commander Thrix studied tactical displays showing similar archaeological sites that had been discovered across the galaxy in the wake of their initial findings. Reports are coming in from 17 different star systems. Teams are finding identical chamber structures on worlds that span thousands of light years. The implications were staggering. The future human civilization hadn't just sent back information to one location. They had created a galaxy-wide network of temporal communication posts, each containing specific information relevant to the species and civilizations in that region. Elena, Dr. Marcus Chen approached carefully, were receiving priority communications from the Galactic Council. "They want a full briefing on our discoveries." Elena disconnected from the neural interface, her mind still processing the incredible wealth of knowledge she had accessed. "The Council needs to understand that this isn't just about sharing technology. The information here suggests that the current political structure of the galaxy is heading toward a crisis that could destroy everything." She moved to the central display, where holographic maps showed the current political boundaries and power structures of known galactic civilization. With a few gestures, she overlaid the information from the temporal artifacts, showing predicted alliance shifts, resource conflicts, and technological developments. "According to the timeline embedded in the artifacts, we have approximately 200 standard years before a cascade of events leads to galactic war," Elena explained. "The future humans didn't just develop time communication to share technology. They did it to prevent the extinction of intelligent life in this galaxy." Dr. Lyra Songweaver's harmonic patterns shifted to frequencies that indicated deep concern. "The predictions show conflicts between species that are currently allied. How can we trust information that suggests our friends will become our enemies?" Elena highlighted specific sections of the temporal data. "The artifacts don't just show what will happen. They show why. Most of the conflicts arise from misunderstandings about resource distribution and technological development. Species that develop certain technologies too quickly without proper social frameworks end up threatening their neighbors, even without meaning to." Hive Queen Zach's translator device crackled as she processed the information. "My species is shown as being particularly dangerous in the future timeline. The artifacts suggest our rapid reproduction rate combined with certain technological advances could be perceived as an existential threat by other civilizations. But they also show solutions," Elena pointed out. "Alternative development paths that allow each species to reach their full potential without threatening others." The future humans mapped out hundreds of different scenarios and their outcomes. The discussion was interrupted by an urgent communication from the expedition's security team. "Dr. Chen, we have ships approaching the system. Multiple fleets from different species. They're requesting permission to land." Marcus activated the external communication array. "This is Dr. Marcus Chen, expedition leader. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came from multiple sources simultaneously. Representatives from the Galactic Council, various species scientific academies, and even some military organizations had all dispatched ships to Kepler 442b after news of the discoveries had spread. They all want access to the temporal information, Elena realized. "But we haven't fully understood the implications of sharing it yet." Zefkara's optical enhancers focused on the data streams showing incoming fleet compositions. "Some of these formations include species that are not part of the Galactic Council. Word of our discoveries has reached independent systems and, potentially hostile civilizations." Commander Thrix immediately activated defensive protocols. "We need to establish a secure perimeter around the dig site. If this information falls into the wrong hands, it could accelerate the very conflicts the artifacts are warning us about." Elena returned to the neural interface, diving deeper into the temporal data to understand the protocols future humans had established for sharing this knowledge. The information flow intensified, and, suddenly, she was experiencing visions of potential futures based on different choices they could make right now. In one timeline, they immediately shared all the temporal information with every species that requested it. The result was a technological arms race as civilizations rushed to implement advanced systems without proper understanding. The predicted galactic war arrived a century earlier and was even more devastating. In another timeline, they kept the information secret and tried to implement changes gradually. This led to suspicion and paranoia among species who discovered that humanity had access to future knowledge. Trust between civilizations collapsed, again leading to conflict. "There's a specific protocol," Elena announced, her voice strained from the intensity of the neural interface connection. "The future humans created a staged revelation system. We're supposed to form a multinational research consortium first, with equal representation from every major species. The information gets shared in carefully planned phases, with each technological advance accompanied by mandatory social and ethical training." Dr. Kestor monitored Elena's neural activity carefully. The strain on her consciousness is increasing. "Perhaps we should limit these interface sessions." "No," Elena insisted. "There's more. I'm accessing information about the consortium structure. The future humans didn't just provide warnings and technology. They created a blueprint for a new form of galactic governance based on mutual understanding and shared development." The chamber's temporal crystals began pulsing in synchronized patterns as Elena went deeper into the interface. Suddenly, holographic figures appeared throughout the room. They were unmistakably human, but their technology and appearance suggested an advancement level far beyond current capabilities. Elena Vasquez, one of the holographic figures, spoke, its voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through time itself. "You have reached the activation threshold for direct temporal communication." Elena struggled to maintain her connection as the presence of the future human consciousness felt overwhelming. "Who are you? How are you communicating across time?" "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, from approximately 47,000 years in your future. We are the same consciousness, separated by temporal distance. The artifacts you have discovered are our gift to the past, designed to prevent the catastrophic mistakes our timeline made." The chamber fell silent as every being present absorbed the implications of direct communication with the future. "The incoming fleets represent a critical decision point," the future Elena continued. "How you handle this moment will determine whether the galaxy follows our destructive path or finds a better way forward." Present Elena felt knowledge flowing directly between her past and future selves. "The consortium protocol is the key. But it has to be implemented exactly as designed, or the results will be catastrophic." The future Elena gestured, and the holographic displays around the chamber showed detailed organizational charts and procedural frameworks. Each species must contribute equally to the research effort. No single civilization can be allowed to dominate the knowledge-sharing process. The temporal information contains technologies that could either unite the galaxy or destroy it completely. Commander Thrix studied the organizational charts carefully. This would require unprecedented cooperation between species that have been enemies for centuries. "How can we convince them to participate?" "By demonstrating the alternatives," the future Elena replied. The displays shifted to show timeline projections of galactic destruction. Every species represented in the current fleets has something to gain from cooperation and everything to lose from conflict. Dr. Lyra Songweaver's harmonic patterns shifted to frequencies of understanding. The shared threat creates shared incentive. But the implementation will be incredibly complex. That's why the temporal artifacts contain not just technological information, but detailed social and political frameworks, President Elena said, her connection to her future self providing unprecedented clarity. Every aspect of the consortium has been tested across multiple timeline iterations. The communication link with the future began to weaken as Elena's neural capacity reached its limits. "Remember," the future Elena said as her holographic form started to fade, "trust in the process we've designed. The protocols exist for reasons that won't become apparent until much later in the timeline." As the connection ended, Elena collapsed from the neural interface, her consciousness overwhelmed by the experience of communicating across tens of thousands of years. Dr. Chen immediately contacted the incoming fleets. "This is Expedition Leader Dr. Marcus Chen. We are prepared to share our discoveries, but only under specific protocols. We request that each fleet send a maximum of 5 representatives for an initial briefing. All military vessels must maintain position outside the system's asteroid belt." The responses were mixed. Some species agreed immediately, recognizing the wisdom of caution. Others demanded immediate access to all information. A few fleets began moving toward aggressive positions, clearly prepared to take the artifacts by force if necessary. The future Elena warned us about this, present Elena said as she recovered from the neural interface session. The consortium has to be established voluntarily, or it won't work. But we can't force cooperation. Zefkara studied the tactical displays showing fleet positions. Perhaps we can demonstrate the value of cooperation by sharing some of the less dangerous technological improvements. Show them what's possible when species work together. Elena accessed the artifact databases to find appropriate demonstration technologies. Here. Medical advances that could extend lifespans for every known species. Energy efficiency improvements that could reduce resource conflicts. Communication technologies that could eliminate translation barriers completely. If we can show them the benefits of cooperation, Dr. Chen said, maybe they'll be willing to commit to the full consortium structure. As the various species representatives arrived on the planet's surface, Elena prepared for what she knew would be the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. The future of every intelligent civilization hung in the balance, and the protocols left by future humanity were the only guide for navigating the complex negotiations ahead. The temporal artifacts had provided the knowledge needed to save galactic civilization, but actually implementing that knowledge would require unprecedented trust and cooperation between species that had spent millennia as rivals. Elena could only hope that the fear of mutual destruction would prove stronger than the suspicion and ambition that had driven galactic politics for so long. The Grand Assembly Chamber had been hastily constructed from prefabricated modules brought by the various fleets. Representatives from 43 different species sat in carefully arranged sections, each delegation equipped with translation devices and environmental systems suited to their specific needs. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation and suspicion. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing the temporal artifacts and their decoded messages. She had spent the past 3 days preparing for this presentation, knowing that the words she spoke here would echo through galactic history. Honored representatives, she began, her voice carried by translators into dozens of different languages and communication formats. What we have discovered on this world challenges everything we thought we knew about galactic history and our collective future. Ambassador Krextal from the Draconian Empire leaned forward in his environmental suit, his reptilian features showing skeptical interest. Human scientist, we have traveled far to hear your claims about future knowledge. Provide evidence that cannot be fabricated. Elena activated the central display, showing the chamber where the temporal artifacts had been discovered. The evidence is not just in what these artifacts say, but in what they allow us to do. Dr. Zefkara, would you please share your experience with the Altarian Plague protocols? Professor Zefkara rose from his delegation section, his forearms moving gracefully as he accessed his personal data systems. 3 days ago, I was given information from these artifacts that described a plague that devastated my world 3,000 years ago. But, more importantly, it provided a cure for a genetic disorder that still affects millions of my people. He activated a medical display showing complex genetic structures. Using the protocols from the temporal artifacts, our medical teams have successfully treated 17 patients with complete genetic restoration. This technology is beyond anything our civilization has developed independently. Murmurs of interest rippled through the assembly as delegates from various species recognized the significance of such an achievement. High harmonist Velsera from the Symphonic Collective expressed her thoughts through musical tones that carried complex emotional undertones. The evidence is compelling, but why should we trust information that comes specifically from future humans? What assurance do we have that this knowledge serves humanity's interests above all others? Elena had anticipated this question. Because the temporal artifacts don't just contain information beneficial to humanity. Each species represented here has received specific knowledge relevant to your greatest challenges. The future humans created this system to save all of galactic civilization, not to establish human dominance. She gestured to the various delegation sections. Commander Thrix has received tactical information that could prevent the resource wars threatening the Outer Rim territories. The crystalline mines have been given computational frameworks that could solve the processing bottleneck limiting your expansion. Every species here has something to gain from this cooperation. Hive Queen Zack's translator device buzzed with electronic harmonics. But cooperation requires trust, and trust requires understanding motivations. Why would future humans spend enormous resources to help species they might never encounter? Elena connected to the neural interface briefly, accessing deeper layers of the temporal information. Because in the original timeline, humanity survived the galactic wars that destroyed most other civilizations. Future humans lived in a galaxy where they were essentially alone, surrounded by dead worlds and extinct species. They developed temporal communication not for conquest, but for redemption. The chamber fell silent as representatives processed the implications of humanity as the sole survivors of galactic catastrophe. The temporal records show that humanity's survival came at an enormous cost, Elena continued. Technological advancement without wisdom, competition without cooperation, expansion without consideration for others. Future humanity learned that true advancement requires the diversity of thought and experience that only comes from multiple species working together. Ambassador Serthak from the Void Walker Federation spoke through quantum fluctuations translated into audible speech. Assuming we accept these claims, what exactly are you proposing? How would this cooperation function in practical terms? Elena activated the organizational charts provided by the temporal artifacts. The Galactic Development Consortium. A multinational research and governance body with equal representation from every participating species. All temporal information would be shared through the consortium, with technological development proceeding at a pace that allows for proper social and ethical integration. She highlighted specific aspects of the proposed structure. No single species would have access to information that others don't receive. Development projects would be joint ventures with shared benefits. Most importantly, the consortium would include mandatory conflict resolution protocols to prevent the competitive dynamics that led to destruction in the original timeline. Chancellor Mordun from the Silicon-based collective projected his thoughts through crystalline resonance patterns. The administrative complexity would be enormous. Coordinating research and development across dozens of species with different biological needs, social structures, and technological capabilities seems practically impossible. That's where the temporal artifacts provide the greatest advantage, Elena replied. Future humanity tested thousands of different organizational models across multiple timeline iterations. The consortium structure we're proposing has been refined through centuries of experience to handle exactly these complexities. She displayed detailed procedural frameworks. Each species contributes according to their strengths while receiving benefits suited to their needs. The hive minds excel at large-scale coordination, so they would manage logistical operations. The crystalline collectives process information at incredible speeds, making them ideal for data analysis. Human creativity and adaptability would be focused on innovation and problem-solving. Dr. Lyra Songweaver expressed concern through harmonic frequencies that conveyed deep uncertainty. What safeguards exist to prevent any participant from gaining unfair advantages or using consortium knowledge for aggressive purposes? Elena had hoped to avoid this topic initially, but she realized that complete transparency was essential. The temporal artifacts include monitoring technologies that can detect misuse of consortium knowledge. More importantly, they contain defensive capabilities that can neutralize threats to galactic stability. The atmosphere in the chamber shifted immediately as military representatives from various fleets registered the implications of unknown defensive systems. Admiral Korthrex from the Stellar Navy demanded clarification through his species' electromagnetic communication methods. Are you threatening military action against species that don't comply with your consortium structure? Not threatening, Elena clarified quickly. The defensive systems are automated safeguards built into the temporal artifacts themselves. They're designed to prevent the development of technologies that could lead to planetary destruction or species extinction. These aren't human weapons pointed at other species. They're protection protocols that apply equally to everyone, including humanity. She accessed specific technical data from the artifacts. The safeguards won't interfere with normal technological development or legitimate defensive systems. They only activate in response to technologies that have historically led to galactic catastrophe. Planet killers, consciousness-destroying viruses, reality-warping weapons. Ambassador Krextal's reptilian features showed intense interest. And these safeguards would protect all consortium members equally? More than that, Elena replied. The safeguards protect all intelligent life, whether they're consortium members or not. Future humanity learned that galactic stability requires protecting even hostile species from developing catastrophically dangerous technologies. The revelation sparked intense debate among the delegations. Some saw the safeguards as essential protection against galactic threats. Others viewed them as unacceptable restrictions on sovereign development rights. Elena called for order and activated the neural interface for a deeper connection to the temporal data. I understand the concerns about sovereignty and independence. Let me show you what the unrestricted development path looks like. The chamber's displays filled with timeline projections showing galactic development without the consortium structure. Species developed in isolation, competing for resources and territory. Advanced technologies were weaponized before their implications were fully understood. Within 2 centuries, cascading conflicts destroyed most inhabited worlds. In contrast, Elena continued, the consortium timeline shows unprecedented prosperity for every participating species. Resource conflicts become unnecessary as energy and matter conversion technologies eliminate scarcity. Territorial disputes end as space habitats provide unlimited expansion possibilities. Most importantly, the diversity of participating species leads to innovations that no single civilization could achieve alone. The projections showed gleaming cities on thousands of worlds, massive space habitats supporting trillions of beings from dozens of species, and technological achievements that seemed almost magical in their scope. High harmonist Valsera expressed cautious optimism through melodic patterns that conveyed hope tempered by uncertainty. The potential benefits are undeniable, but the practical challenges of implementation remain enormous. How would decisions be made when species have fundamentally different values and priorities? Elena smiled, feeling confidence flow from her connection to the temporal data. That's perhaps the most elegant aspect of the consortium structure. Instead of trying to force consensus between different value systems, the organization is designed to find solutions that serve multiple value sets simultaneously. She displayed complex decision-making matrices that showed how problems could be approached from multiple ethical and practical frameworks simultaneously. For example, the energy distribution protocols satisfy the hive mind's need for efficiency, the crystalline collective's emphasis on logical optimization, and the human desire for individual choice. As the presentation continued, Elena could see attitudes shifting among the various delegations. The combination of demonstrated benefits, protective safeguards, and respect for species autonomy was addressing most of the major concerns that had been raised. But she knew that the real challenge wasn't convincing species to join the consortium. According to the temporal artifacts, the critical moment would come when they had to choose between short-term competitive advantages and long-term collective survival. That test was coming sooner than anyone in the chamber realized. The emergency alert that shattered the consortium negotiations came without warning. Admiral Korthrex's communication implants flared with urgent signals from his fleet's long-range sensors, while similar alerts cascaded through every delegation's security systems. Unknown vessels approaching from the galactic rim, Admiral Korthrex announced, his electromagnetic patterns carrying undertones of serious concern. Configuration suggests destroyer-class technology. Estimated arrival time, 6 standard hours. Dr. Elena Vasquez felt the temporal artifacts responding to the crisis, their crystalline structures pulsing with increased intensity. Through the neural interface, she accessed emergency protocols that future humanity had embedded for exactly this type of situation. This is what the temporal records warned us about, Elena announced to the assembly. The Devourers. A species that achieves technological advancement through consuming other civilizations. In the original timeline, they arrived at this moment and triggered the cascade of conflicts that destroyed the galaxy. Ambassador Krextel's reptilian features showed immediate recognition. The Devourers are myths. Legends told to frighten young warriors. No one has confirmed their existence. Because in the original timeline, no one survived their first encounter to report back, Elena replied grimly. But the temporal artifacts contain detailed intelligence about their capabilities and intentions. She activated emergency displays showing the approaching fleet. The ships were massive, easily dwarfing even the largest vessels brought by the consortium delegations. Their hull configurations suggested technology that incorporated elements from dozens of different species, clearly acquired through conquest and absorption. High harmonist Valsera's harmonic patterns shifted to frequencies of fear and urgency. The Devourer assault had been repelled, but Elena knew from the temporal data that this was only the beginning of their strategy. As the alien fleet regrouped at the system's edge, she felt a subtle shift in the consortium's neural network. Something was interfering with the consciousness bridges that had made their coordinated defense possible. Network stability is fluctuating, reported Dr. Kestor, his cybernetic implants struggling to maintain connection integrity. I'm detecting foreign data streams attempting to infiltrate our consciousness links. Elena accessed the temporal artifact's deepest security protocols as she realized what was happening. They're not just trying to destroy us militarily. They're attacking the neural network directly, trying to corrupt the trust bonds that make the consortium functional. Through the compromised network, she began experiencing flashes of other species' darkest fears and suspicions. Draconian territorial instincts clashed with hive-mind collective imperatives. Crystalline logic structures rejected human emotional decision-making patterns. The careful balance of multi-species cooperation was being systematically undermined. I can feel it too, Ambassador Krextal announced, his reptilian features showing strain. Thoughts that aren't my own. Suspicions about human motives for sharing the temporal technology. High harmonist Velsera's musical communication patterns became discordant as foreign influences affected her consciousness. The harmony is breaking down. I'm sensing deliberate attempts to amplify our species' natural conflicts with each other. Elena dove deeper into the neural interface, seeking the countermeasures that future humanity had developed for exactly this situation. The information came with warnings about the personal cost of implementing these defenses. There's a way to stop their infiltration, Elena announced through the faltering network. But it requires one person to serve as a consciousness anchor for the entire consortium. The temporal artifacts can create a stable neural foundation, but whoever serves as the anchor will experience the combined consciousness of all species simultaneously. The implications were sobering. Human neural patterns were already stretched to their limits, coordinating between dozens of species. Acting as a permanent anchor for the entire consortium network would mean experiencing reality from hundreds of different perspectives continuously. I'll do it, Elena said simply. Elena, no, Dr. Marcus Chen protested through the network. The strain could destroy your individual consciousness permanently. You could lose yourself completely in the collective experience. Elena felt the temporal data flowing through her connection to her future self. In the original timeline, the Devourer corruption succeeded because no one was willing to make this sacrifice. Billions of beings died because cooperation failed at the critical moment. She began implementing the anchor protocols before anyone could stop her. The sensation was overwhelming as her consciousness expanded to encompass not just the 43 species in the consortium, but also the temporal perspectives of future humanity across thousands of years. Through Altarian perception, she saw time as flowing energy patterns. Through crystalline processing, she experienced reality as mathematical structures. Through hive mind awareness, she felt the connections between all living things. Through draconian instincts, she understood the territorial imperatives that drove civilizations to expand and compete. But, instead of losing herself in the chaos of multiple perspectives, Elena found that her human adaptability allowed her to synthesize these different viewpoints into a unified understanding that was greater than any individual consciousness could achieve. Network stability restored, Dr. Kestor reported with amazement. The foreign data streams are being filtered out completely. The Devourer fleet began its second assault, this time targeting the planet's surface directly in an attempt to destroy the temporal artifacts. But, the consortium's response was even more coordinated than before, with Elena's consciousness anchor allowing perfect synchronization between all allied forces. They're adapting faster than predicted, Admiral Korthrex observed as Devourer tactics shifted in real time. Their technology is learning from our defensive patterns. Elena experienced the battle from hundreds of perspectives simultaneously, seeing patterns and opportunities that no single consciousness could detect. They're not adapting. They're accessing absorbed knowledge from civilizations they've conquered before. But, the temporal artifacts contain countermeasures for technologies that haven't been developed yet. She began implementing defensive systems that drew on technological developments from thousands of years in the future. Weapons that could disrupt the quantum foundations of matter. Shields that existed in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. Tactical coordination that operated through temporal loops, allowing the consortium to respond to Devourer attacks before they were actually launched. The alien fleet found themselves outmatched not just by superior coordination, but by technologies that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Ships that were destroyed reappeared moments later in different locations. Attacks that should have been impossible to predict were countered before they began. How are they doing this? The Devourer communication carried undertones of confusion for the first time. No civilization has developed these capabilities before absorption into our collective. Elena responded through the consortium network, her voice carrying the combined authority of every species in the Alliance plus the wisdom of future humanity.
That's because you've never encountered a civilization that chose cooperation over conquest.
The technologies you're seeing aren't the product of any single species. They're the result of diverse consciousnesses working together to solve problems that individual minds can't comprehend. The revelation seemed to shake the Devourer fleet's confidence. Their entire existence was based on the premise that absorption was superior to cooperation, that collective consciousness was more effective than individual diversity working together. Impossible, the Devourer response carried harmonics of distress.
Cooperation leads to conflict. Individual consciousness leads to competition. Only absorption creates true unity.
You're wrong, Elena replied, her consciousness now encompassing not just the current consortium members but also temporal connections to future civilizations.
True unity comes from diversity choosing to work together, not from forced uniformity. Individual consciousness creates strength through difference, not weakness through division. As if responding to her words, the temporal artifacts across the galaxy began activating simultaneously. Similar archaeological sites on hundreds of worlds started transmitting the same message that Elena was channeling through the consortium network. The Devourer fleet suddenly found themselves surrounded not just by the 43 species at Kepler 442b, but by representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy. The temporal artifacts had been sending coordination signals across thousands of light-years, creating a galaxy-wide version of the consciousness network that Elena was anchoring. "This is Fleet Admiral Zarthok of the Galactic Peripheral Defense Force," came a transmission from ships emerging from hyperspace. "All civilian evacuation routes are secure. Military units are in position to support consortium operations."
Similar transmissions came from defense forces representing every major sector of the galaxy. The Devourer invasion had triggered the largest coordinated military response in galactic history, unified through the consciousness network that the temporal artifacts had made possible. Elena felt the weight of coordinating not just 43 species, but hundreds of different civilizations across the entire galaxy. Her individual human consciousness began to strain under the load, but she found strength in the diversity of perspectives flowing through the network. "Network overload detected," Dr. Kestor warned.
"Elena's neural patterns are approaching critical limits."
"I can handle it," Elena insisted, though she could feel her individual identity beginning to blur into the collective consciousness she was anchoring.
"No, you can't," came a familiar voice.
The holographic form of future Elena appeared beside her, but this time accompanied by representatives of every species that would eventually join the consortium.
"That's why the anchor isn't designed to be permanent.
Once the network is stable, the responsibility gets distributed across multiple consciousness nodes."
President Elena felt the load beginning to shift as other beings throughout the galaxy began sharing the anchoring responsibility.
Instead of one human consciousness trying to coordinate everything, the network became self-sustaining through voluntary cooperation between hundreds of species.
The Devourer fleet, faced with unified opposition from an entire galaxy's worth of civilizations, began to withdraw.
But their parting message carried ominous undertones. "This galaxy is quarantined pending our return with adequate forces.
You have delayed absorption, not prevented it."
As the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, Elena collapsed from the neural interface, her consciousness finally able to return to individual human perspective. But something fundamental had changed. The experience of anchoring the galactic network had left her with permanent awareness of the connections between all conscious beings. "The consortium is established," she announced weakly.
"But this is just the beginning. The Devourers will return, and they'll bring entire fleets from other galaxies.
We have maybe 50 years to prepare for a conflict that will determine whether consciousness itself survives in this region of the universe." Professor Zethkara helped Elena to her feet, his optical enhancers detecting the profound changes in her neural patterns.
"The temporal artifacts have additional information about long-term defense strategies?" Elena nodded, feeling the vast knowledge embedded in the crystalline structures around them. "Everything we need to know is here.
Technologies that can span galactic distances, weapons that can protect entire star clusters, defense networks that can coordinate across multiple galaxies simultaneously. But implementing them will require cooperation between species that have never even met each other." As the various fleets began establishing permanent coordination protocols, Elena realized that humanity's role in galactic civilization had fundamentally changed.
They were no longer just another species struggling for survival and advancement.
They had become the bridge between individual consciousness and collective action, the species that could help others work together without losing their unique identities. The temporal artifacts continued pulsing with soft light, their mission only partially complete. They had prevented the immediate destruction of galactic civilization, but the real work was just beginning. Elena looked up at the stars, knowing that somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the Devourers were preparing for their return. But, for the first time in galactic history, the diverse species of the Milky Way would be ready for them. The consortium established at Kepler 442b was just the first step in building a defense network that would span multiple galaxies, powered by the simple human insight that cooperation could achieve what conquest never could. The future Elena had warned them about was still coming, but now they had the tools and the unity to face it. The real test of galactic civilization was yet to come, but Elena was confident that the consciousness network they had created would prove stronger than any force trying to destroy it. As the temporal artifacts gradually dimmed, their immediate purpose fulfilled, Elena felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not through dominance or submission, but through the uniquely human ability to bring different perspectives together in pursuit of common goals. The galaxy was finally ready to defend itself, and Elena had played her part in ensuring that consciousness and cooperation would triumph over conquest and absorption. The future was still uncertain, but, for the first time in galactic history, all species were facing it together.